welcome back to my channel. So for those of you guys who are new, I am Ash and today I'm going to be doing my first story time video on this channel. I don't think I've ever shared the story about how I found out I was pregnant when I was 19, how I told my boyfriend at the time, and how I told my parents. So this story can be quite long-winded, so I'm going to do my best to keep it as succinct as possible and jump straight into it. Alright, so this story begins the night before I found out I was pregnant. I was attending a 30th birthday party for my former boss, and my then boyfriend, who I'd been living with for about 9 months, came along to celebrate as well. We could have taken a taxi, but I chose to drive. I wasn't feeling very well, so I thought I probably won't drink. And before you guys freak out, it's actually legal to drink at 18 when you're in Australia. So I was of legal age to drink because I was 19. And when I got there, my boss at the time, whose birthday it was, came up to me and was like, here, have a drink, let's celebrate. This wasn't a usual boss-employee relationship. We were very close, almost like sisters. We always used to joke around together and have so much fun. So ordinarily, I wouldn't have any problem having a drink with her, but tonight, because I was unwell and because I was driving, I chose not to. And as soon as I said I wasn't feeling well, she was like, oh my God, are you pregnant? And usually she was the kind of person who would joke around, so I didn't think too much of it. But throughout the night, she just kept coming up to me and being like, Ash, I really think you're pregnant. And part of me was like, you're just joking. But then the other part of me was like, I don't know, maybe I am. And this lady, she was always onto it when it came to these sorts of things. Like, she was always able to tell if someone was pregnant or if someone was in labor or whatever. She was always onto it. So a part of me was wondering if maybe she was right, maybe she was cottoning onto something. I wasn't sure, but it was in the back of my mind throughout the whole night. So we left at about 12 that night from memory, and the party continued long after we were gone. We came home and just slept it off. I didn't think too much more about it. But the next morning, because it was a Sunday, I used to go out to the local markets and just get some fruit and veg. And so I let James sleep in and went out to do that. And when I was out, I thought I would just pick up a pregnancy test just to check. When I got home, James and I sat down to watch a movie. And so I made the excuse to go to the bathroom upstairs in our ensuite and took this test. And straight away, you guys, there were the 2 lines. And I knew how pregnancy tests work. Like, I knew that meant I was pregnant. But there was this other side of me that was like, no, that's not right. That's not right. So I left it because the box had said, like, leave it 3 to 5 minutes. So in my mind, I was just like, oh, maybe it's just, it's not the time to check it yet. Maybe it'll go back to just 1 line. I know that sounds crazy, but that was just what was happening inside my head at the time. And I went downstairs to watch this movie for another couple of minutes and then said, I'm not feeling well. I'm going to go back upstairs to the bathroom. He probably thought I had like diarrhea or something. I don't know. I went back upstairs and checked it again, and sure enough, there were the 2 lines. Very clearly, there were 2 lines. I just remember sitting down on the edge of my bed and staring at this thing, being like, I couldn't put a proper thought together. Like, I was just like, what? I just couldn't believe it. I really couldn't. So I'd been sitting up there for a while, I guess, because James came up to come and see what the deal was, and I couldn't get a word out. I just handed him the test, and from there, it's a total blur. I really don't remember too much of what happened other than James being super supportive, like really, really supportive. He was like, you know, this wasn't in our plans, but we're gonna make it work. Everything is gonna be okay. Like, we've just got to get our act together. And you know, we were both studying uni at the time. He was working part-time at Nando's, so we really did have to get our act together. And then I think he must have gone into shock because we both, without even really talking to each other about it, just started cleaning our house like nobody's business. Like, we scrubbed that house from top to bottom that day, and I think it must have just been like, I don't know, subconsciously we were like, oh my God, we're gonna be parents, we have to get the house in order immediately, even though we knew we would have had like 9 months or whatever to worry about it. So later on that evening, James had to go to work at Nando's, and because it was close to where my parents lived, whenever he worked there, just for the company, I used to go over to their house and hang out with my mum. We used to watch like our shows together, like Girls of the Playboy Mansion or Kendra or Kardashians. We had a whole bunch of shows that we just used to binge watch while I was there, and we needed that time because we have a very close relationship, like a best friend relationship, so we enjoyed that. And I went over to go and watch TV with my mum, and I don't know, in my mind, I still wasn't pregnant. I had made a doctor's appointment for the following day to go and confirm with the doctor, but I didn't want to say anything until I'd spoken to a doctor, so I left it. It was so awkward for me sitting next to my mum, who I share everything with, not being able to share that with her. But I don't know, I kept quiet the whole night, went home. I don't think she noticed that anything was up, although she's my mum, so she probably did, but I just didn't say anything. So the next morning, James went off to uni. I took the day off and went off to my doctor's appointment. I'd figured that he was going to do a blood test on me and I would have a bit of time, like a day or two, for the results to come back. But he handed me a urine cup and was like, go and fill this with a sample and I'll do a pee stick test right here, which he did. And he was like, yeah, no, you're pregnant. Like, you are 100% pregnant right now. Without a doubt in my mind, you are pregnant. He did, of course, order a blood test as well to do all of my levels, but he was like, this is enough to confirm that you're pregnant. So with that, I was like, okay. I went straight over to the shop, bought myself a calendar because I was like, I'm gonna need to mark in all my dates and everything. I don't know why, the first thing I did was buy a calendar. And then I went home and sat down and called my mum. I wasn't really 100% sure how she was going to react or what to say to her. So I just said, look mum, I've just been to the doctor's and it looks like I'm pregnant. And she went quiet for what seemed like about 5 minutes, but it was probably more like about 5 seconds. And eventually just said, I'm not disappointed in you, I'm disappointed for you. Which I still remember to this day because it really did mean a lot, like that she wasn't disappointed in me. She just knew that James and I had a lot of plans. We were both working a lot, and so we were working towards building our first home. We were really into it at the stage. Like, we were looking at house plans and land and looking at going and speaking to a bank and everything. And we knew that that would have to be put on hold. As well as that, we were both studying at uni at the time, and she knew that having a child was going to make that a little bit harder as well. James also didn't have, he just had his Nando's job. He didn't have a full-time job at that stage as well. So my mum didn't want either of us to miss out on anything because we'd had a child quite young, and I appreciated that. But she was really supportive. My dad, I was a little bit worried about because my dad is like me. We can be a little bit fiery, and he had very, very high hopes for me. He still does. And so my mum was like, you know what? I'm gonna tell dad. And I was fine with that. I know it sounds cowardly, but I was quite fine with her telling him, and I would go and talk to him about it once he'd had a time to process the information. So that was the Monday, and she told him basically as soon as he got home from work, and the following day was a Tuesday, and James was working at Nando's that night. So I went over, I sat down with mum and watched television for a while. We didn't really talk about it or anything, but then eventually dad came in and we had a discussion. I don't want to go too much into it. It wasn't a really pleasant discussion. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, he totally ripped into me about it, but it was from a place of love. He really just wanted me to be aware of how big a child was gonna be. And for me, for James, for both of my parents, there was never a question as to whether or not I was going to keep the child. Like, from the moment I got that positive pregnancy test, it meant I was having a baby. There was no question about that. So he wanted me to be fully aware of what was about to happen and just to be motivated to make sure that I got my act together and that I finished my degree and I did what I was supposed to do to make sure that my child was going to have a good life, because it was no longer about me, it was about my child. And he did say those exact words, that it's no longer about you, it's about your child, which I appreciate, because although it was hard to hear at the time, it's the truth, and I needed to be aware of that, and he wanted to make sure that I was as prepared as I could be. After that, my mum got used to the idea very, very quickly, because she and I had such a close relationship, so I think the idea of adding another little person to our little girl group, especially once we found out that I was having a girl, was just so exciting, and preparing for this little baby, and it was going to be the first grandchild, and there was just so much excitement. So it was a really fun time for me and my mum. My dad took a little longer to warm up to the idea, but oh my gosh, once Heidi was born, I swear, he must love that child more than me, because he is so doting. And even as I speak, Heidi's kindergarten was having like a Father's Night to celebrate Father's Day. And so James, Heidi, and my dad have all gone off to that together, because he is a very doting grandfather to her and to my 2 little boys as well. So it did work out well, and I knew that once I had that child that he was going to be very, very much in love, because he loves little babies so much, and he's always been such a plucky person. So I always knew that that support would be there, but telling them that was just such a scary thing to do. To be honest, I was totally shell-shocked by how cool James was with everything. Of course, he had his reservations like anybody would, but he really warmed up to the idea very quickly, and things have worked out really well for us. Thank goodness, because so many times when things like this happen, they don't work out well, or the 2 parents decide that being together is not a good option anymore. And we were just really lucky that everything worked out the way it did, because we were planning on getting engaged that year or the following year, and we did have plans to buy a house together and everything, so we did know we wanted to be together. But I think you don't really know your partner until you have a child together. Sometimes it can separate you, sometimes it can bring you closer together. And I was just super, super duper lucky that it brought us together in the end. So here I am, a couple of years later. My daughter is about to be 5 in December and has been greeted by 2 little brothers. Since that time, we did end up getting engaged and then married. We did manage to buy our first home, and then hopefully in the next 12 or so months, we're going to look at building our next home. And after that, who knows, we might even look at adding another little addition to our family. Time can only tell. So things did end up working out for the best for us in the end, and we would not change it for the world. So that is it for today's story time video. If you liked it, please give it a big thumbs up. Hit subscribe if you want to see more of these kinds of videos, and of course let me know in the comments down below what kind of other videos you would like to see on this channel. You can also follow me on all of my socials. I've got Snapchat, Pinterest, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I think that's all of them, but in case I've missed any, I'm going to have all of the links down in the description box below. And other than that, I will see you guys all next time. Bye!